So, with this whole coronavirus thing, my actual real size table is currently stuck where I built it, in my grandma's barn. But not to worry, because I made a replica out of some old cardboard. So hopefully this works and counts, I guess. But I did my biography project on Albert Einstein. The first portion of my presentation is going to be answering the question that you sent us on Wednesday through the email. The first one, which was, what did you find most interesting about your creative hero? I found most interesting about Einstein was that when he died, he was cremated, everything except his brain. His brain was taken out and preserved for research, which I found really interesting because that's not really normal, but given who he was, it makes a lot of sense. Which leads us into my first part of my little table. My little replica table is my doodle. This is what I doodled in class. It kind of looks like a vase, which is what I thought it looked like at least. And to go with my little vase, I thought I'd make a little like ashes holder type thing. I don't really know if they had that back then, but it makes sense now. Up top, it just has Albert Einstein's initials, his birth date, and his death date. This leads into his early childhood, which is what I want to talk about next. He was born on March 14th in 1887. He was born to Herman and Pauline Einstein. Einstein was born into a Jewish family. So the base of my table is a Jewish star representing his religion, and the little boat thing on top I'll get to later. Einstein's parents had a lot of concerns about Einstein when he was a child because he didn't learn to speak until around the age of 4 years old, so very late into his childhood. But nevertheless, he learned to talk, and he started his private education in 1884. He went to a private elementary school named Munich. Einstein received his bachelor's degree from Swiss Federal Polytechnic in 1900 and his PhD from the University of Zurich in 1905. In between these times, you could say he had a pretty traumatic time because in 1902, his father passed away, leaving him to take care of his mother and his sister. Supporting his mother and sister was pretty difficult for him because he was unemployed, and his family also had an overwhelming amount of debt to his uncle. The next sort of topic I want to talk about is how big of a risk taker Einstein was. Einstein loved taking risks. He was also very comfortable and content with making mistakes. I have a quote from him that says, "Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new." I really like that because I love trying new things, and mistakes happen sometimes, and I don't think that should discourage you, and I guess that's kind of what that made me think of. But on my table, I have a boat right in the center because one of the risks Einstein used to take was going out boating, which doesn't seem like a big risk or like very prone to mistakes, but it does sound like that when you realize that Einstein couldn't swim. He didn't know how to swim, but he loved the water, and I also have this little part of my table representing that. It's like a no swimming sign. Another thing I found really interesting when I was researching about Einstein's theory of relativity was that a lot of the work wasn't originally his, and a lot of the ideas actually got bounced to him by other people. When talking about the theory, he actually gave a lot of credit to his friend Michelangelo Besso, and he said that he gave him a lot of ideas that actually led to him, like, finding his theory of relativity. While I was reading and researching about his theory of relativity, and I found that he got a lot of his information from other people, it made me think of the that one section in the book that talked about group work bringing out other ideas and better ideas, and when you combine them, you can actually make a really good idea that could work. And you can see that here when he's talking about bouncing ideas and him coming up with his legendary theory of relativity. Another thing I found pretty interesting about Einstein when I was researching was he really loved his imagination and his like fantasy world. I found a quote of him saying, "The gift of fantasy has meant more to me than my talent for absorbing positive knowledge." I like this quote because it made me think about when I was reading about his job as a store clerk, when he would talk about the downtime he had, that's when he came up with his best and most amount of ideas and where his theory started from. This quote is one of the main things that really stood out to me about deciding whether Einstein was a divergent thinker or a convergent thinker. And with this, I came to the conclusion that I think he's a divergent thinker because he uses his imagination over logic and creative thinking over critical thinking.